Thank you for meeting with me. Can you say your name and what you do for work?
My name is Brian Schaudt, and I am a physical therapist. I work in Wheeler County. It's the smallest county in Oregon. I also work with people in Gilliam County too, which is actually the second smallest county in Oregon. And so combined, there's a little over 3,000 people in both counties. And it's very remote, very beautiful, and there's just some good people out here. For physical therapy, one, I'm the only physical therapist in this area, so really whoever needs PT, I'm the guy. So we'll see high school athletes, we'll see farmers and ranchers. There's a big farming community, especially in Gilliam County with wheat. In Wheeler County, they do a lot of ranching and a little bit of there used to be a big lumber industry in the past in Wheeler County, and a large portion of the patients that I work with here are older and kind of live within town too.
What is the community where you work like?
Yeah. So when I came to this area for the first time, I immediately got a sense of community where there's not as many people out here, and so everyone has one job, and they just have, there's a mailman, there's one grocery store, there's one physical therapist, there's people have their roles, and we all work together and be able to support each other in order to be out here. And that's the coolest part about the community that I live in now, is just the fact that we all have one different type of job, and we come together, in the purest sense. It gets a little more complicated the bigger it gets with a bunch of different people, and you're having, but here it's super simple and it's pure. There's a baker, there's one restaurant, there's just single digit amount of things out here, and we all come together to provide that, one bank, those type of things. So it's a simple and cool aspect of community. I'm fairly new to working out in this area. I've been living out here for a little bit, and it's definitely been a change from some of the other locations that I've been at in bigger areas, where I don't see the patients that I'm working with hardly ever. But every week since I've been here, I've seen one of my patients in the community every single week, and so that's a super unique part of being out here. You're really embedded in the community, and you do life with the people that are your patients.
What values are important to you personally?
Yeah. So what service means to me out here as a physical therapist is really doing my due diligence and just having the buck stop with me in terms of what's going on with the patient. There's a lot of things that can happen, with a human body, and in a bigger town, there's more resources to address the multitude of things. Well, out here, you need to be a little bit more diverse or broad in terms of the range of things that you need to be able to work with and see from a patient perspective. And so really, service in that regard is saying, hey, if I can't work with you, you're gonna have to do a 4-hour round trip. So I'm gonna work really hard and try to serve you in this way so that we don't have to put that burden on you if possible. There are appropriate times when you need to go refer out for a bunch of different reasons. But in general, service means being able to address as many things as I possibly can out here to lessen the burden on my community for the service I provide.
How would you describe your career journey?
Yeah, so from high school, I had a super great education and I went to a public high school, 4A high school in Oregon, and my teachers were awesome. Got a great education. Went over to the University of Oregon and got a degree, an undergrad degree there, and really found by the end of that it wasn't what I was looking for in terms of a career. And so what I did is I pursued a different career throughout that, coaching track and field at a collegiate level, and I did that for a while. And while I was doing that, I just kind of discovered, while I was working with athletes and just helping them move and be able to perform better with their bodies and understand movement and just have a fascination with movement, then I started to realize, hey, I really enjoyed this aspect of the science behind it, and start seeing more of, like, when athletes get injured, it's like more of that clinical side. It's like, man, I wish I could help you right now, but I don't really know what to do. And that was the spark that kind of stemmed this interest into what I wanted to do and pursue physical therapy. So really, I came straight from undergrad, finished that, and then I worked for a bit. But to apply for PT school, none of my undergrad I didn't have any prereqs for my undergraduate degree. So really, it was quite a journey to restart my education and start from square one at Lane Community College. I had to go back and basically take all these classes, prerequisite classes for PT school again. And so starting from that point when I was like 25 or 26 and doing that for multiple years, it was tough, but I had some flexibility with my job and just working through those things to be able to apply for physical therapy school later down the line. So that's a little bit of, I did a couple more things in that, but in general, that's kind of the short notes of from high school till the end of my doctorate in physical therapy, some of the routes that I took.
What are some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Yeah, by far the hardest thing that scholastically, academically, that I've done, maybe even probably a top 3, top 5 hardest thing I've ever done in my life, was to restart. And when I was 24 and really contemplating, after I'd finished my whole undergraduate degree, you work all the way through high school, you finish your undergrad, and you think that's the end. And then, from that point on, you think you're good. But understanding that what you went to school for, what you want to do, isn't truly, it turns out it wasn't really what I wanted. And being honest with yourself was really hard. And then going back, it was incredibly tough, being a 25, 26-year-old. And at the time I was coaching, at Lane Community College, and I was also taking classes. So, it's like you're eating humble pie, having the same classes with some of the student athletes that you're working with as well. And just that constant beat down of, like, you're back here and you have to basically, how I got through those times when I was applying to PT school and taking those prereqs was just taking it literally sometimes one day at a time, or just one class at a time, and saying, I can handle this chunk right now, and then when I'm done, I'm going to move on to the next one, and just repeating and repeating and repeating until you basically finish the job. And it keeps you sane. And if you look at the full project and everything that is required to be able to get to your doctorate, that physical therapy program in my example, it just is overwhelming, and it makes you want to quit. But when you take it a little at a time and you continually remind yourself, occasionally reach into the cookie jar and say, hey, that program, whatever it is, that goal that I have is out there, but right now I need to finish this physics assignment, or I need to finish this whatever it is to make it to that goal. Those were huge, but it was a very trying time going back to do that. So I competed for the University of Oregon in track and field from 2008 to 2012. And, at that time I was pretty much majoring in track and field. Like, I wanted to be a track and field athlete. And I was, I would say I was a good athlete. I contributed at the Pac-12, Pac-10 meet, but wasn't like one of the standout guys that was like winning national championships and stuff like that. But to do that, to be a student athlete, it's similar to people in college that work jobs while they're also going to classes. There's just a lot of commitment and discipline and focus that needs to happen when you have this whole other side of, you're taking classes, but you're also, you've got this other big time commitment with being a student athlete or being an employee or something like that. And really just working through that gave me, one, an interest in specifically the field that I wanted to go into, which is physical therapy, and just understanding how to train someone, how to work with athletes and those type of things. Being an athlete myself, and then a coach at the University of Oregon for some of the athletes there as well. But really just stemmed from honestly just that regular discipline of like, hey, I gotta wake up early, and I don't want to because I stayed up too late the night before, but this is a job for me, and I need to show up in that weight room, and I need to put in that work. I need to come back. And it really instilled a lot of work ethic and discipline in a routine for me to be able to kind of move forward beyond that in life.
What advice do you have for students trying to figure out what they want to do later in life?
The journey to your career is rarely a straight line. And that's totally normal, and it's totally okay. Because when you take that curve off of your initial plan, it helps redirect you back into the plan. And so, people, especially me, I've done that where maybe after my undergrad, I realized I didn't want to do that job that my degree was in. It was disheartening. I felt like I was not taking that straight shot, and I veered off. But really, if I wouldn't have done that, and I wouldn't have been honest with myself and said, hey, this isn't for me, then I never would have been a physical therapist, and I never would have been able to be in this community that I'm in and be able to contribute and be able to serve the community. So I would say these twists and turns in your career journey are totally normal, and they're very healthy, because the journey is what it's about. So an advice that I'd give a middle school or high school student, I'm just gonna pretend that I'm that middle school and high school student. I'm gonna talk to myself, and I would say, Brian, you need to be shadowing and do some real on-the-job experience, because you can study all you want in a textbook, and trust me, I've done a lot of school, and you can read about it, you can watch YouTube videos, you can do those type of things, and they're really informative. But just go out and experience and invest the time that it takes to understand that job. That's what's going to give you the most realistic thing. All of the other stuff, like this video, for instance, you're going to learn a lot about what physical therapy is, but I highly encourage a middle school or high school student, if they're considering a career in physical therapy, to go shadow a physical therapist, and to go, into whatever setting they want. I already kind of described how broad of a field physical therapy is. There's a place for everyone in PT. And if you're a middle school or high school student, you got to get out and get some on the job observation and experience and stuff like that, to really see if this career is for you or not.
Do you have any advice for students who might be interested in working in the profession?
Yeah. So the type of student that would be drawn to just a medical career in some regard, or, I'm going to say PT specifically, is, for PT, the baseline is you have to have some fascination with how humans move, and just a curiosity of like, oh, I know what's going on with that person. It's like, and just to be able to understand what drives that. If you're a nurse, something that drives the curiosity about that job medically, like, oh, like if you're working in surgery, how does that process work? Maybe I know someone that had a surgery. It's like, you know, how does that process of getting someone to the pre-op and post-op and stuff, you know, just that innate curiosity with the nature of the job, what in whatever medical profession, you know, for most medical professions, physical therapy especially, you got to be a people person. You gotta, I mean, you know, you look at the Dr. House type, you know, where you're just doing a quick consult with the patient, not good person skills, and then, you know, and then going off and solving this really complex things. And that there is a place for that in medicine, absolutely. But a large portion of the careers involve taking care of people. And so what you need to do is, you know, be able to have a listening ear and be able to care for someone, and show that. And to do that, you have to have, you know, you're going to have to be around people to do that. So being a people person is a huge asset for most of the medical professions. And then the third one, I think that's really important, is just being a lifelong learner. Especially if you're on the provider side of it, if you're going to provide any type of medical services, the field and just science changes so quickly that you need to constantly be updating yourself with what's recent in order to provide the best services, the best practice to the patients that you serve.
Do you have any advice for students who are trying to find their way?
Yeah. When I was a high schooler, it is extremely common, and I did this in a ton of different avenues, to go where you're successful. And for me, you know, that ended up being a track and field athletic kind of deal. And a lot of people do that because they see success, they get praise for it, and then they just go. And, you know, I triple jumped. It's like, you're going to triple jump for fun? Like, it's, you know, it's not a game. It's just, it's a event in track and field. It's just what you do. But it, you know, for me, it wasn't like a primary passion of mine, but it was something that I was good at. So I did it because I was good at it. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, at some point, for longevity, for whatever you want to do, especially with something like a career, like a lifelong thing that you want, you got to find that base root and that reason for what you're doing. Because if you just follow what you're good at, but you're truly not interested in it, that will only carry you so far. And ultimately, you know, you're going to look back and say, man, I was good at that, but ultimately I really wanted to do this. And you don't want to be in that position. You want to go from that innate passion. And even if it doesn't necessarily match up with your skill level, you know, to some degree, you know, if you're 5'2" and you want to be in the NBA, like there's some realities there, right? But for a career, most career stuff, I would encourage someone to move from that place where they're interested or passionate and go out of that rather than what they are initially good at and get that praise for, and then just keep following along that path.